right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show, June the 15th, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, 11 p.m. on the East Coast. Glad you're with us. Larry Krueger, joined by John Dickinson from 95.7 The Game. We're going to talk a little Niners. We're going to talk a little Warriors tonight. Welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they are open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Make sure you check it out. If you're in the Bay, get you some Pig and a Pickle. We're also brought to you by New York Style Italian Sausage, and we've got a brand new sponsor on the show as well. It is Marin Auto Glass, and you see their scroll on the bottom of the screen. MarinAutoGlass.com on the web, 415-883-3030. If you shatter a windshield, maybe you got a pebble on the freeway, you got a hairline crack in your windshield, and you want to get it changed out, but man, you don't got time to go anywhere, they come to you. Marin Auto Glass. Check them out, MarinAutoGlass.com. Once again, 415-883-3030. JD, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Larry. Thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And been a little while since we've done one of these. I think going back to the end of the Lakers Warriors series, when things ended just so poorly down in LA with the blowout loss and just unable to buy a bucket. But appreciate you having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. And, of course, I saw you down at Niner Camp. For those who don't know, JD covers the Warriors, but he also covers the Giants and the Niners as well. And he was down at minicamp last week, and we saw him down in Santa Clara. And I thought, man, this would be a great opportunity to talk Warriors and Niners, maybe even mix in a little Giants with you. But why don't we jump in on the Niners? Where are you on as far as – that seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong by this, but I get the sense that this quarterback thing with the 49ers is just so polarizing. It's like, I personally don't feel that way about the quarterbacks. I definitely think that Brock Purdy should be the starter based on what I saw last year. But I acknowledge that, even though I think Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback and a great prospect, that he's not, one of these guys that is just like, oh, there's no doubt, there's no doubts about him, and there's no challenger and this and that. He's got Sam Darnold there. He's got a big arm. You got Trey Lance there. He was the 3rd pick in the draft by the 49ers. But it just seems to me that people are deciding like who they like as a quarterback, and then figuring out like what their argument is for why their favorite quarterback ought to be the 49ers starter. And I bring this up because, it's like, if it's a Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy debate, immediately the people that are pro Trey Lance are like, Trey Lance has got much better arm strength than Brock Purdy. And it becomes very much a referendum on arm strength. Okay, and then the 49ers brought in Sam Darnold, and to me, Darnold has clearly the best arm strength of any of the quarterbacks. He throws the best deep ball. He's got the best arm talent. He can throw a tight spiral from almost any trajectory, any release point. His downfield accuracy is better than Trey, better than Brock. He's got the big arm. There's no doubt about it. And yet, if it becomes a Trey Lance, Sam Darnold debate, then suddenly it's no longer about arm strength. Now it's about turnovers, and Sam commits too many turnovers. And then I always go back to, well, wait a second. If it's about arm strength, then Darnold is your starter. If it's about turnovers, then Purdy is your starter. And yet, then it's, now you've got the Trey Lance fan in a tizzy, and he's just like, I want Trey to start, and he's got a stronger arm than Brock, and he takes better care of the football than Sam. And so then that guy gets very frustrated. What do you think of the debate? I'm sure you're on Twitter.
Sure.
You're very much aware. You work for a radio station. You're very much aware of the kind of the polarizing nature of this off-season debate. What do you think about it? As you're looking at it from 50,000 feet, so to speak.
It's an extension of the old Jimmy Garoppolo versus Trey Lance debate that I thought was going to end when Jimmy Garoppolo was injured and then subsequently no longer going to be on the roster. But you look at the way things have played out with Trey trying to come back from his injury. And I think the best thing, just as a quick side note to that, for Trey Lance moving forward is the fact that it does appear that he's healthy. And so we'll see as things move forward and they get into training camp. We're kind of in that dead zone right now leading up to training camp. That's a big positive sign for Trey. But I feel like the whole debate is an extension of what has been going on these last couple of years, where you had Team Jimmy and Team Trey, and everybody had to pick a side, it felt like, among the 49er fan base. And it was about wins and functionality in the offense, or you were Team Trey, and it was about needing a dynamic thrower who could also run a little bit and bring this element to the offense that the 49ers haven't had and certainly didn't have with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think how we got to where we are now, where it's Brock versus Trey versus Sam, is really just an extension of that old debate that went on for these last couple of years between Jimmy and Trey and who gave him the best chance to win. And it looked like Jimmy was going to be gone. And then Jimmy came back and then Trey got hurt. And, I don't know what your take was off of last year's training camp, but I really was unimpressed with Trey Lance. And I was one of the few people, and I don't recall where your stance was off the top of my head, but I was one of the few people that were really concerned about his ability last season to function and lead the 49er offense. I think it was going to get to a point where I understood Kyle Shanahan starting Trey Lance at the beginning of the year. It was his team throughout the entire offseason, but I left Soldier Field in Chicago week 1, and I know it was a monsoon and all of that, thinking that at some point Kyle Shanahan was going to have to bench Trey Lance, and it was going to end up being Jimmy Garoppolo's team had he not gotten hurt. And so I think Trey looks better than he did at this point in training camp last year, but we're not even to that point yet on the calendar. We just got through OTAs and mini camp and all that. I'll kind of kick it back to you this way. I think it's Brock Purdy's job. Brock Purdy is the one, if healthy. The competition is competition between who's going to be 2 and who's going to be 3. And the way I look at it from being out at the OTAs and the mini camp, I think Trey performed capably enough to go into training camp at least with the edge on Darnold in that battle. I thought he looked more comfortable, more confident than he had at any point. And I wasn't really impressed with Darnold. A lot of inaccurate throws, a lot of wobblers. I mean, I agree that he has the arm talent, but I didn't totally see it. I don't like to make too much of OTAs and minicamp, but going into it, I'm going to at least give Trey the benefit of the doubt over Darnold, but they're both playing for second. And then we'll see how things shake out as far as Brock Purdy, who's kind of in the he gets the first round bye in this competition as the other two battle it out. But if he isn't healthy, the 49ers have to make a decision quick, fast, and in a hurry as to who the better is of the other two. But I think the intent is to keep all three because they don't want to end up in a situation where they feel burned like they've had in 4 of the last 6 years where they've needed 3 quarterbacks and last year more than that to get through the season.
As far as last year went, I thought that that Trey looked pretty good. I thought he looked pretty good last year in camp from the standpoint of, I didn't see him making a lot of mistakes. There was the errant pass and this and that, but to me, there are some guys that are just bad practice players. And I just I was always like, okay, they've got a really raw quarterback who needs field time. So I was never expecting him to be super polished, like a Jimmy or a 5-year vet or anything like that. I knew that we were going to see inconsistencies just based on the resume and what he had done in college and what he hadn't done in college. So I wasn't that surprised by what he did. I guess I blocked a lot of it out from the standpoint of it really wasn't a competition. I mean, there was Sudfeld and there was Purdy. But it was Trey's job, and there was no doubt it was his job. And Jimmy was on a side field.
Not going to be on the team, right? It was, when's he going to get cut? When's he going to get traded? What's going to happen? And then he didn't. And
then all of a sudden, once they re-signed Jimmy, to me, that was a strong indication that they thought Trey was really raw. Then the season starts, and it's so funny because people talk about this Bears game like, oh, you can't evaluate that game at all. It was a monsoon. No, it wasn't. It wasn't
not the first half.
It wasn't a monsoon at all until the fourth quarter. I mean, it was a totally dry field basically in the first half. I mean, there was some water, but I mean, it was fine. I mean, it was a total.
He was pretty good in the first half. I thought passable in the first half, but they left some points on the board.
I mean, I think they only scored 7 points though in the first half.
Yeah, Debo got the ball punched out when they were going in at about the 10 early, and so there were some points left out there.
No question. So I didn't think that Trey played poorly in that game. My bigger issue was I didn't like the utilization of Trey in between the tackles. I didn't like the way he was utilized in the Arizona game. I said it the year before. I really didn't like the way he was utilized before he went down in the Seattle game. I didn't love the fact that they were running the quarterback between the tackles. And to me, that's a surefire loser. It's a surefire way to get your quarterback killed. But there's also a reason, right? There's a reason that Kyle Shanahan was utilizing him that way. It's because he didn't feel like he could utilize him from the pocket as strictly a pocket passer, which is concerning. I mean, that to me is a significant concern. But I thought Trey looked okay. I thought, he missed the one to Croft on the sideline on the corner route, which I guess he's got to complete. But you know what? I've seen Jimmy miss passes before too. It didn't seem glaring. I thought I liked overall what I saw from Trey. And I was just in this mindset of, you know what? You got a young quarterback who barely played any college football. And, this first month of games is going to be, who cares what it looks like? Just get wins, right? It doesn't matter how you win, just that you win. And I was totally prepared to just kind of allow for a lot of bumps in the road and a lot of inconsistency and a lot of issues because I knew we were dealing with a very young quarterback.
So Jimmy gave him that safety net if they weren't winning. That was, I think, I'm with you on everything you're saying. I just think they were going to not win at the level that they were going to need to win to continue to develop. And nobody will ever know for sure because he got hurt and Jimmy took over and they were still 3-4 before they ran the table. And Purdy came in at the end and all of that. But I was just a little leery as to the overall functionality. Like, you could play him and he'd have his ups and downs and it would all be part of the development that you need for having a second-year quarterback that you believe is a franchise guy. But the concern for me was it's kind of like the debate we'd always have about the Warriors, which is, hey, your goal is to win a championship. Like, the Niners' goal last year was to win a championship and develop essentially a rookie. I know he really wasn't a rookie, but a second-year young franchise quarterback at the same time. And I believe, no way to know, but I believe there was going to come a point where they weren't going to win enough and Trey wasn't going to be playing well enough to where, now that you had Jimmy there as the safety net, that Kyle Shanahan would have gone to Jimmy. In a sense, the injury spared any of that. It was just Jimmy's team, and then he got hurt, and then Purdy took over, and Purdy earned his shot. I know there was a comment that alluded to that I saw pop up on the screen. It was like, hey, that's why Purdy's the one, if healthy. It's what he did from December on until the moment he got hurt in Philadelphia. We still don't know what Trey can do. Jimmy's gone. Darnold has not been an effective NFL quarterback when he's gotten the opportunity. Now, he's never played with a team like this Niners team before, but in a way, Purdy is the most known commodity that the 49ers have. So it's his job as the incumbent to bring it back to the here and now. and then we'll go from there as far as if somebody gets hurt or if you need a backup. That's where I think bringing Trey along slower, I think it benefits him moving forward as far as his development goes.
Trey,
and he looks healthy. Yeah, Trey, I think it benefits him to battle,
no doubt,
be the two, or and then go from there and wait. You just kind of wait. If there's an opportunity, you'll get thrown in and you'll get a chance to show what you can do at that point.
Isn't that ironic that the people that are pushing so hard for Trey want him to succeed so badly, but they are pushing for him to maybe start the year. But I agree with you. His best chance to play good football this year is if he gets more time watching, more reps at practice, more time learning this offense before he's asked to go out there and execute it and win games. Fozzie says, didn't know I missed JD until seeing him now. LOL. There you go. That's right. JD is one of the best in the biz. That's why he's on. You know what to me was the most interesting part of last year compared to this year is that the 49ers, think about this for a second. This is pretty amazing if you really think about it. The 49ers they had a camp that had Trey and Brock and Nate Sudfeld, and they went from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy to Josh Johnson, sadly, to Christian McCaffrey. But they went all the way through the year, and there was never any controversy, and the locker room never fractured, never divided, never even came close. And here's why. Because when you started with Trey, there was no Jimmy, and there was no doubt Trey was going to win the number one job, and did. So there was nobody in camp going, I don't think I would go with Trey. Nope. Everybody was 100% behind Trey. Then by the time Jimmy hits the field, Trey's done for the year. So it wasn't like I would go with Jimmy over Trey. Nah, I don't know. I'd rather go with Trey over Jimmy. Nope. There was no debate. Trey was done for the year. Here's Jimmy Garoppolo. Nobody was saying, hey, go with Purdy over. At that point, Sudfeld was gone. Go with Purdy over Jimmy. It was Jimmy's job until Jimmy went out and essentially was so seriously injured in that Miami game first week in December that it felt immediately like Jimmy was out for the year, even though we didn't have anything definitive there. It felt like Jimmy was out for the year, and they were going to have to go the rest of the way with Brock. And so it was all like, hey, we're all in on Brock. And he played so well, there wouldn't have been any reason for them to not be all in on Brock. And then Brock goes down, and it's like, obviously, Josh Johnson comes in, and there's, at that point, he was the last man standing. Jimmy wasn't even active. So there was no debate even in that game over which quarterback to play. Isn't that interesting? They went literally with 4 different quarterbacks in the meat and potatoes of their season, and never once for even 1 minute was there, I think you should go with this guy over that guy. It was always clearly defined. It's Trey's team. It's Jimmy's team. It's Brock's team. All right, they're all down. Josh, you're the man. At no point was there ever any other quarterback option available that was debated in social media, Twitter, radio, television, YouTube, nothing. Never 1 minute of debate. Now fast forward to right now. Now we're getting ready to go to training camp.
It's completely the opposite, right?
Brock Purdy isn't healthy right now, but eventually, according to some people, he may be healthy enough to practice and participate in the preseason at some point. I don't know if we'll see it or not. But now we have a situation where literally there are people predicting Sam Darnold, people saying it's Trey Lance has got the best upside, people saying it's Purdy's job to lose. Greg Papa was talking up Brandon Allen the other day. I mean, the last year, no divisiveness at all. The team never split, never was divided. The media never opened, the locker room never opened on a single day where anybody could walk up to a player and say, hey, you know what? who do you think should be the quarterback based on what you've seen? Or, hey, what do you think of the quarterbacks and how they're playing? It was always clearly defined, and there was no other option. And now we're going into a world of options and a world of, and if it's clear cut and Brock Purdy plays here and everybody else plays down here, then it may be just like last year. It's just like Brock's job and nobody's even going to say anything about it. But in reality, if Brock is in any way diminished or if he struggles at all at any point, you're going to have maybe some people arguing for Trey, some arguing for Darnold, some saying Brandon Allen. It's quite a bit different, isn't it?
It's extremely different. I mean, it's really the polar opposite of what it was through all of those different iterations that you mentioned from last season. I do think it is Brock's show. Brock Purdy is the one if he's healthy. And I don't think we're going to see him in a preseason game necessarily. It sounds like the timing of it is leading him to be able to participate toward the end of camp. But really, it seems like his first team all-in participation. It seems like it's right now bookmarked for that 2-week or so period between the final preseason game and now the beginning of the regular season on September the 10th. So it feels like, that's where that's at as far as what they've said, at least for the timeline, although everybody's going to be watching him throughout the course of training camp, whether it's throwing on a side field or taking part in drills at some point. But I do think that's one thing I think we have to be clear on, at least I want to be extremely clear on. It's Brock Purdy is the one. He is the number one. He earned it.
In your mind, there is no debate at all. Brock Purdy
coming
is the starter.
in.
Is that what you're saying?
Brock Purdy is the starter to me. No debate. And now it's just a matter of, is he healthy enough? And I'm going to assume that he's going to be healthy enough until proven up. Like, there's no competition, right? If he's not healthy, that's one thing. And then we look at, okay, what's going on with Trey and Darnold. Now we're all going to be watching it play out in real time, sure. But I view that as a separate entity almost. Like, you've got Trey and Darnold going, but Trey's not battling for the one. He is, but only if Purdy is hurt, right? If Purdy's healthy, it's not like Trey's going to do something in training camp where you're like, damn, he's going to be ahead of Purdy now. Like, unless Purdy
preseason. What about preseason? What if Trey goes into these preseason games and lights it up? Then what?
I still think it's Purdy's job. I still think it's Purdy's job to start. Yeah. And then, I mean, once the regular season games start, then it's all going to be based on performance. And is Brock Purdy what he was over those final 8 games in the 2022 season? Does it look like he's less than 100%? As he starts to play games? Is he not the same quarterback that he was? Do things not function at the level that they did? And then, to me, that's where the door opens. But I think you go into it with Purdy as the one. I think that's the 49ers plan, is to go into it with Purdy as the one. And then you let Trey battle it out. If Trey's awesome in the preseason, terrific. Then you've got an option to go to if Purdy isn't healthy or if Purdy struggles. You're confident at that point that the guy that you spent the number 3 pick in the draft 2 years ago on is good to go. Like, I think that's a great scenario. I remember we talked about this on some shows we did together around the holidays, the fact, and we didn't know Darnold was going to be in the fold at this point, but I think he's a hell of a great option to have as a third option, or as one of 3 options. We don't know if he's going to be necessarily the third option yet, but I said it to you, December, January, I would want to go into next season with Purdy and Trey Lance both on the roster. And I know you made a great point. You said, hey, I don't know if I'm Trey Lance's agent, I'm probably going to want out. I'm going to want to play. I get that from his standpoint. If they had taken that course of action, maybe it still comes to that if he lights it up and doesn't get the job or whatever. But I think from the 49ers standpoint, you're loving what you have in Purdy, and you're hoping that Trey Lance is awesome, because as we've seen, you may need 2 quarterbacks to get through a season. Purdy may not be what he was. If that plays out, you go to Trey, and we may be talking a year from now, like, okay, everything's back on track. The Niners have their franchise quarterback, and it's Trey Lance. Like, we don't know, but to still have that option as essentially a backup plan off of Brock Purdy is, I think, a great position for the 49ers to be in. The worst case scenario is if Purdy is hurt or takes dramatic steps back, regresses, isn't the guy that he was, and Trey isn't very good, and then Darnold is the Darnold that he's been to this point in the NFL, and then you don't have 3 quarterbacks. So you could have 2 really good quarterbacks, maybe even 3 really good quarterbacks that you're happy with. Purdy is the headliner, or you could have none. Like both of those scenarios, believe it or not, are on the table for the Niners as well. When you start to juxtapose comparing this situation to what last year's situation was.
And what if Brandon Allen plays well?
Yeah,
then what? I mean, would they consider moving any quarterback? Would Brandon Allen, is there nothing that Brandon Allen can do to make the roster? What if he plays well in the preseason and looks good in camp? Will they trade Sam Darnold? Would they trade Trey Lance? Would they, I mean, the one thing about Brandon Allen, he was the backup to Joe Burrow this last year. And, there's some moxie there. I'll say this. I've watched Brandon Allen tape going back to Arkansas. Not the biggest guy, but man, he's got a little bit of moxie. He's got a little bit of juice. I mean, if you told me that he was going to outperform some quarterback this summer and not be the worst quarterback in the preseason, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be like, no way, no how, no chance. I think it's viable. I think it's possible that he could play really, really well. And then what's the scenario? Jesus says, how many games is Purdy the number 1 if he struggles? Niners play week 1 in Heinz Field against the Steelers. Steelers are like 8-1 in the last 9 home openers when it came at Heinz Field in week 1. They've got a great record. I think it's like 13-2 or something like that in the first game of the year at Heinz Field, but it's 8-1 when it's week 1. And they got a ferocious pass rush, all kinds of TJ Watt and all kinds of guys up front. If the Steelers take advantage of Colton McKivitz and the Niners' remade offensive line, sack the quarterback a ton, pull an upset, because the Niners, I think, will be favored in the game, week 1. Do people start calling for Trey Lance? Do people start calling for Sam Darnold if Brock's the starter at that point? And if Brock's not the starter, does all of a sudden, it's a one and done for a Trey Lance or a one and done for Sam Darnold? And then what's the dialogue like? Oh, Shanahan set up, Trey Lance to fail because he's got him starting week 1 at Heinz Field against, the Steelers' vicious defense. And this is all set up for Trey to fail. And,
No.
I mean,
no.
There's a divisive nature of this that we never saw last year. And I'm just kind of wondering, is somebody going to walk into the locker room and say to any number of players, what'd you think of the quarterback situation? And if it's murky and close, I mean, if it's defined by no matter who's the starter, then that's easier to deal with. But if it's not defined, if it's kind of like, well, Brock had a pretty good preseason, but Trey had a good preseason. Well, Sam had a pretty good, if it's very kind of like, hey, you know what? It's all beauty in the eye of the beholder. Will some player in the room be asked a question and speak out of turn and say, you know what? I think Trey Lance is the best young quarterback I've ever seen, and I think he should be playing. I know he's not right now, but all it's going to take is one quote from one player to crack and kind of, kick that door open just a little bit, and suddenly you're going to have a full-fledged online debate. And I just kind of wonder if the 49ers are aware of this and if they're concerned about that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tough first game. I'll kind of leave that there. There's no doubt that's a tough environment, and you laid out a bunch of reasons why. I think the locker room has a legitimate belief in Brock Purdy to where it's like, to answer Jesus's question, It's not one game. To me, it's probably 5 to 7 games, depending upon how he plays. I mean, I think he gets a good chunk of the season. Like he won every game up until he got hurt that he started last year. So he's going to get a little bit of leeway. Like it's not going to be treated like it's a week to week proposition. He's going to get treated like somebody that is the most trustable option that the 49ers have going into the season. Now, how the locker room views hey, how is it being handled and when do you go to the next guy and all of that depends on how Trey Lance and Sam Darnold play in the preseason and in training camp. If they both play well, then I think it adds some pressure to Purdy to perform. If they don't, then I think you're more inclined to ride it out and have a longer leash with Purdy. But I think, we haven't really seen Purdy struggle yet. So it's to the point where I do think you have to allow for him to struggle and try to fix it. It's the old, hey, you come on and you're executing the game plan and you're showing off your skill set and the league adjusts and then you've got to adjust back. And so I do think he gets an opportunity at least to do that. So I would say 5 to 7 games is probably where I would put it at of, hey, maybe it doesn't start great the first 2 or 3. Now, if he throws 4 interceptions, something like that, then all right, maybe we're having a different conversation. How it looks always matters. But I think if it's just in the general realm of overall acceptable quarterback play, I think he's getting a 5 to 7 game leash before we're really starting to talk about other options. And I think the locker room believes enough in Brock Purdy and what he did last year to where it's not going to get contentious if reporters get in there and start saying, hey, what did you think of the quarterback situation? Like it to me, it would take that long for that to become a problem anyway, that in that 5 to 7 realm. Now, if you're not winning, all bets are off, but I think the Niners believe they're a good enough team to where they're going to, even if it isn't looking great, like the Niners still, hey, if they're having a bad year next year, like define bad year through 6 games or 7 games, 3 and 4, like, maybe 2 and 5 at worst. And at that point, you're probably making a change if the quarterback's making a problem, 2 and 4, 2 and 5. But I think the Niners think they're going to be good enough to where, bad might be 3 and 2. And at that point, you're probably not making a change. Bad might be 2 and 3. At that point, you're not necessarily making a change.
It's very interesting because last year there was never a moment of, well, you got multiple quarterbacks and it's kind of like unknown. It was always very defined. This year, we're heading into a world that could be very defined, but it could be totally undefined. Steve Choi says Darnold will be the best-looking quarterback during training camp. I guarantee this. This doesn't mean he'll start, but he should. So we got to vote for Sam. Ian Sharp says Darnold and Lance trade value about the same. Well, I don't know. I'll throw that to you in a question form. What do you think? Let's just say, just based on today, they're both former 3rd picks overall. Trey Lance has never demonstrated the negative of Sam Darnold, but he's also never shown some of the positives that Sam has shown. He hasn't shown anything really. He's like, he's the total unknown. Where Sam is like, hey, we had a good 6-game stretch here, and there's some good highlights to watch, but there's also a colossal number of turnovers and struggles. If I said today, who do you think would fetch more in a trade? What do you think?
I think it's probably Trey at this point, just based on the fact that I think that the organization that would want Trey, their evaluation of him would be franchise quarterback and potential star. Like I think that and we don't know this, but I think there probably are a handful of teams out there that, evaluated and graded him pretty high and like his skill set and think he can be a hell of a quarterback with the right development in the right situation. I think Darnold is widely viewed at this point as a scrap heap guy. I'll give you a scenario though, where Darnold could potentially net more. And it's the scenario of championship-ready team that loses a quarterback, let's say in the preseason. A team that thinks they've got it all dialed, but somebody tears an ACL or somebody breaks a foot or something like that.
A team that's ready to win games now, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's say the Bengals, something happens with Burrow or something like that, or Josh Allen or something
Patriots
like that.
Or somebody.
It's just a team that, hey, everything else is dialed and you don't want to have the whole thing completely, have your season completely be a waste. So you think, hey, you know what, Darnold and our team can win 10 games and we can make the playoffs and not have the season be a complete and utter loss. I think that's one area where you get toward the end of camp and Trey's going to be the 2, or it's pretty even, but as the Niners that Trey's going to be the 2. Because I think if it's even, Trey's the 2, right? If it's even,
I think so.
To me, yeah, that's the guy you've invested in, especially with the Allen part of it. Because I think Allen could easily be a 3 that you trust and keep on the roster. So I think even having him gives you a chance to basically let the other 2 compete. Whoever loses that competition, you can move off of. If they both look great, then maybe you do get something for Trey or for Darnold, and you still have Allen there to be a 3 who, let's be honest, is probably he'd be the most competent 3 in the league at that point, right? I mean, that would be, given his own experience level as being a 2. So I think the Niners have some flexibility as far as that goes, which is a decent position as long as that whoever your starter is going to be productive and you can win games with them.
Patrick Sheehan says, well, what if Trey bails out or balls out in the preseason? Trade value increased. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Clarsart 49, willing to bet the Vikings and the Raiders are interested in Trey. I can see the Falcons too. Jesus has a good one here. He says, any sleeper catching the eye in Niners camp? What do you think, JD? You've been down there. It's a 90-man roster, lots and lots of players running around on the field. Do you see, as Jesus refers to here, a sleeper candidate that comes to mind?
Not really, to be honest. In the 3 days, I guess. Well, I guess it was 4 days that we were all out there within the last month. I tend to, and this, I tend to use the OTA and the mini camp time period if I'm fortunate enough to be out there, and it was a pleasure to be out there with the Warriors being done. That was the one benefit of the Warriors being done, was that I was able to get out there a little bit. I don't think there was anybody that really popped. And I tend to hold that until training camp, because I do think we over-evaluate at times, guys that are running around and it's, not in pads and it's not a lot of hitting going on or any hitting going on at this point. And so I tend to wait until we get into that routine of, hey, 4 days on, 1 day off, 4 days on, 1 day off. The pads come on at the end of that first block of 4 days, or maybe it's the first block now, or the first day of the second block now the pads come on. But so no, no, not in May, not in June. How about you though? I'm sure you've got a few.
Well, to me, I kind of agree with you that OTAs are early to identify this, because football is played with intensity and there is none here, and football is played with pads and there are no pads. So, so we're not really getting football. But I would say that the 2 guys that opened my eyes so far, I'd say Ronnie Bell, the wide receiver from Michigan, just from the standpoint of when they announced it in the draft, I was like, what? Really? A slowish, smallish wide receiver from Michigan, good college player, but I didn't see a pro player. But man, he really opened my eyes with his just refinement. And then I realized after reading his bio and everything that his dad is the wide receiver coach at Southwest Missouri State. And it would be like, hey, man, the guy's a pretty good public speaker. His dad teaches public speaking. You know what I mean? Something like that. I'm seeing this guy look very refined, very polished in a lot of ways. And then when I saw that his dad was a collegiate wide receiver coach, I thought, okay, that makes sense. That this guy's been coached up like to a level that, much higher than your typical, high school or college receiver. He looks he looks a lot more refined, and now we know why. So on offense, I would say him. And then on defense, Deshaun Jameson, number 49, undrafted free agent corner out of Texas. He just does everywhere. And it's like, if you watch his film, he makes a lot of plays on the football. And then that's what we've seen. We've seen him make lots of plays on the football. And he just seems like he got better and better and better. We haven't even seen him as a return man. I think maybe that's his most dynamic trait, is he's a dynamic return man. But he has been in and around the football, breaking on the ball. His timing is great. I think Jameson's got a great shot to make this football team, and that in itself, as an undrafted free agent corner, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm encouraged by that for sure.
That's really the spot where the Niners have a lot of opportunity for some guys that maybe aren't on the radar to really, like, I feel like their corner situation is just wide open beyond, Charvarius Ward and Isaiah Oliver, who they brought in to play the slot. Like, I feel like the rest of it is it going to be Lenore? Where does Womack fit in? I mean, to me, there's opportunities for players to step in and earn spots, and maybe some slots where guys that have been around aren't going to be around anymore.
Yeah, no, it's a hell of a point. I'm really glad that you're here, man, because I love talking ball with you, and you can chop it up on any sport. One more football before we jump over to Golden State, because I definitely want to get your thoughts on the Warriors. If I say to you, I mean, the way the NFL is, there's always a team that last year wasn't good that this year is good. And just looking at the way the schedule came out, and I don't know if you saw that article. There was an article a few weeks back about, like, who's got the most rest days, and did you see that article? And it was it very much favored the Jets, right? And it makes sense. It's like, hey, the league would love to see Aaron Rodgers lead the Jets to the playoffs. And so the Jets have, like, a rest advantage on their opponents more than any other team in the NFL this year. Right. So like, if the rest advantage would be, we're playing this week and you played on Monday Night Football last week and I played on Sunday Night Football, or I played Sunday, you played Monday. So I have a 1 day advantage rest wise. Well, the Jets have a rest advantage on like 13 games, and it's like far and away the most in the league, where like Chicago, I think, has like a rest advantage on no games or something. It was like one of the smallest in the league. So, but I was going to throw out to you, give me your surprise team. Every year in the NFL, there's some team that didn't make the playoffs that makes it this year, lost double digits that, flipped their schedule around this year, and now they win double digits. Who is the team, in your opinion, that wasn't good last year that you think is going to be good this year?
The one in the AFC that stands out to me, and I like this team going into last year, so maybe I'm doubling down on my own mistake, although there's reasons to think this team's going to be better. Denver, the Denver Broncos, I think in the AFC are the team that stands out the most with Sean Payton now, and another year of Russell Wilson. Like, I just can't fathom that Russell Wilson is just completely washed at this point. And to the point where, Sean Payton coming in, and I know it seems like they've been at every Nuggets game together. They're hanging out. It seems like Sean Payton's trying to clean up a lot of whatever was wrong last year. Certainly. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett was probably the worst coach in the NFL. If at least the AFC, just over his head, it didn't work. Really, we saw it from week one when Seattle beat them up there on the Monday night and Russell Wilson's return game. But I think they're going to have a really good defense. I think their offense struggled mightily, especially early. I think Sean Payton comes in, cleans that up, gets Russell Wilson at a minimum back to respectability as a passer and somebody that can lead a team to a positive record. So I think Denver's the team that stands out as far as that goes in the AFC, at least. In the NFC's a little bit tougher for me. Call me crazy, but the Rams are a team that I kind of wonder about
Hmm.
in the NFC. Like I just wonder. I just wonder with McVay and whatever's going on with Matthew Stafford. Like I don't know. I feel like there's a window there to be respectable, and they were far from respectable last year. And maybe I'm missing somebody else in the NFC, but I'm kind of looking around at some of the teams that weren't good last year in the NFC, and I'm thinking, no, the Cardinals aren't going to be good. I don't think the Saints or the Falcons are going to be good. Panthers don't do it for me. The Lions were already good by the end of the year, just missed the playoffs. And then the whole Eastern Division was 500 or better in the NFC. So I think there's fewer teams to pick from in the NFC. And that's where probably won't be good for the Niners if this is the case. But I kind of feel like the Rams at 5-12 last year are in a spot where they could sneaky be better than expected. And we're looking back and going, wow, Sean McVay. Like, Sean McVay did a decent job, in a different type of setting, than teams with championship aspirations.
I love your Denver pick. Yeah, I'm all on Denver too. I mean, I just think, Denver, they added McGlinchey to their offensive line. They've got some pretty good skill position guys. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I really love Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, the rookie they just drafted. And then, obviously Russell in year 2, and you got Peyton coming over. Dulcich, the tight end from UCLA, is now a year 2 guy. I think he's going to be really good. And then on their defensive front, I mean, you added Frank Clark, you added Zach Allen from Arizona. You already had DJ Jones.
They have a good defense. They had a good defense last year until they kind of quit. Until they kind of quit when everything went awry.
Exactly. And they've got some good defensive players beyond that. Thomas Incoom, Riley Moss, J.L. Skinner. I like Denver with Sean Payton, definitely. They're my team. I guess in the NFC, I'd probably lean towards a guy that I think is an underrated coach as well, and that's Frank Reich at Carolina. I just like Frank Reich. I think he's a really good coach. And I really believe in Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young. They also added Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders helps them quite a bit as a running back. And then they added some pieces as well. Jonathan Mingo, Jamie Robinson in the secondary. There's some there. I mean, I don't feel I'm not as bullish on the Panthers as I am on the Broncos. But they would get my vote in the NFC as the kind of the team that potentially could surprise. You never know, but I think that's what I would go with.
You hate the Rams pick? You hate the Rams pick, or you just or do you?
No. I like the Rams. I think that the Rams pick's a good one. My only thing with the Rams is just that I think they're going to be better. But I mean, I don't know how much better.
Sure.
They added Byron Young and Dawan Johnson to their front. Both those guys are real good and Nick Hampton. So they got a little bit up front, but they've got a bunch of new faces on defense. You got a bunch of new faces on special teams. I mean, it's just a lot of turnover there. I do love that guard that from TCU they drafted, Steve Avila. I mean, he's just a house. So that will help their offensive line. But Stafford's a little older. They don't have great running back depth. They got Cam Akers. I mean, you got Cooper Kupp, but it's just their weapons beyond Kupp are just kind of don't love them. So we'll see. I mean, that one's kind of the Rams are interesting just from the standpoint of McVay's a terrific coach. Stafford's a really good quarterback. But
I'm almost thinking, hey, those two can get you 9. I feel like those two can get you 9, and you won 5 last year, and so you're coming from a good position to do. I think the Cardinals are terrible. I like Seattle, but is Seattle going to replicate what they had last year? We'll see. I feel like there's some wins in the division potentially for the Rams that could boost them up there.
Yeah, no, totally. I like the Ram pick, but I see them more roughly 500. But we'll see. I mean, that's a good option for sure. Let's jump to the NBA side of things. The draft is coming up Thursday. JD will be on 95.7 The Game doing on draft night. doing a show from Chase with Alan Stiles, and you guys will hopefully have whoever the Warriors pick at 19. If they do wind up picking at 19, well, are they going to name a general manager? Who's going to make the pick? I have a theory on what's going to happen in the front office, and I wanted to run it by you. I ran it by Willard today. I personally think that Joe Lacob didn't want Bob Myers to run this draft. I think Myers kind of referenced that was an issue when he said, well, I wasn't really good at that anyway, when in reality he drafted Draymond Green at 35. So, that in and of itself means he was damn good. But I get the feeling that maybe Joe at different times may have been dissatisfied with Bob's drafting. I think Joe wants to do the job himself. And I think that Joe wants to have his say. I think he wants to be the GM. That's why he's got his own board in his office. And I think he wants to let his kids be the general manager and really not even have a Dunleavy. So I think that what's going to happen here is they're not going to make an announcement. They're going to go with the proverbial we will be ready. We will make a pick. And then they will go and run the draft and they'll pick whoever Joe and his kids want. And then then there's going to be summer league and we'll all be grading it out. And then eventually there'll be some early returns. If the early returns are really positive, that people really like who they drafted, or they drafted somebody who went to Vegas and lit it up, and suddenly the early reviews say, man, the Warriors did very, very well in the draft. I think at that point, he's going to come back and say, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but really Kurt and Kent ran the draft room this year. And, I'm inclined to maybe have them do it going forward. And I think that's what this whole thing's about. I think it's going to be like, we've got a draft here where we can do what we want. We don't have to name a GM. And then if we bomb, we can just kind of frame somebody else, or, just say, we still need to hire somebody. Or if they do well and the early returns are very favorable, I think we're going to get this. I know you guys didn't know this, but did you know that Kurt and Kent really ran our draft that everybody loves? The draft that everybody hails is such a great draft. It was actually done by my sons. How about that? And then they become the full-time GM. That would be that. I think there's a chance he'll use Dunleavy as a buffer because he's cognizant of the obvious nepotism and the obvious the optics are bad if you as the owner make the pick, or you're your own GM, or your kid who has no experience becomes the GM. I think he's smart enough to know that the optics are not good there. But I do believe that's what his first choice is. And I think if they have a good draft, 3 weeks later, we're going to get this. Did you guys realize this draft that everybody loved was run by these guys? And then it's going to be like, these guys are going to run things going forward. That's my prediction. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it is going to be much more of a collaborative, between Dunleavy and the scouts and Larry Harris and the Lacobs and everything. And Joe may very well have his board. We know he does. But I think they're all gonna get together and hash it out. The one thing I will say, as far as the pick having a chance to succeed, if they wind up making a pick, and I'm not so sure they're going to make a pick, but if they do, I do think they're going to pick somebody that's going to have a much better chance to succeed more quickly than anybody that they've picked in the last 4 or 5 years. Certainly, really, probably even longer than that. Like I think they're looking for, they're in win now mode as opposed to best player available mode. And I think that was sort of I think that was where the issue was with Bob Myers, is that I could never really tell, and it's not really been reported. It's been speculated on, but the notion of, the Warriors trying to, were they best player available versus specific need versus old versus young. And I never really was it, I'll put it to you this way. Was it Joe that wanted Kuminga where, Bob Myers wanted Franz Wagner because Franz Wagner could have helped a lot more quickly in different ways, that kind of thing? Or was it Bob who wanted Kuminga and they had Kuminga 3 on their board? And, Joe, when Bob rolls with Kuminga, is thinking, hey, I got a dude that's going to be this athlete that's going to be playing the wing in 2 or 3 years and look like he has the potential to be our next superstar, and it didn't pan out. And then it goes back to, well, Bob wanted him, and I would have rather had somebody that could have helped us win another championship. So I don't know which one is what in that, and it's never really come out, but I do get the impression that was the biggest thing that they all collectively struggled with, was that it goes back to the basis of every draft, right? In every sport. Are you going with the best player available, or are you going for the best player that fits what your team needs? And the Warriors have been in this position these last few years where those two things just don't jibe at all. Like they don't, the Warriors had picks that were beholden to, if you're going for the best player available, you're in developmental mode, to where there were other options of players you could have selected that could have helped you in a bigger way than the players that they picked did. So I think the one thing that does seem to be true from everything that I'm hearing and from also what's been reported is, if the Warriors make the pick, and I think they're looking at every possible option to not make the pick, but if they do, I think the player that they get is going to be somebody that they almost demand to be a contributor this season.
What do you make of the Kuminga rumor that they want to use Kuminga as a means to move up in the draft? The Warriors currently have the 19th pick overall. I don't. First of all, it doesn't surprise me that there are Kuminga rumors. One, because I think the Warriors want to make some changes, and I don't think they have any changes that they can really make. I don't think people want Poole, especially at that number. I don't think that that they want to move Klay Thompson. I think that there's, maybe there's some faction within that does, but my guess is that Klay's not going to fetch anything real, and except the fact that he's an expiring. And then Poole, I don't think is going to fetch anything real. But Kuminga, because of his talent, upside, age, I could see 25 teams in the NBA saying, yeah, I want Jonathan Kuminga. And that's what worries me, because I really think that Kuminga's got a ton of talent. And I don't want to see him necessarily moved, because I don't think they'll get full value for him right now. But I definitely think that they're looking to. I think he's going to wind up being moved, because he's the one piece that they have that they can move. I don't think the Warriors can just be like, all right, we're bringing everybody back. We're going to pick somebody at 19, and here we go. I think they want to do something more than that. But what did you make of the rumor that they may use Kuminga to get high up in the lottery?
Didn't surprise me at all. I'm kind of in line with your thinking, and I've said this over the last couple of weeks. The Warriors told everybody, they told the world when they lost to the Lakers in the next few days after that, really that night in LA at the Crypto Arena, that they wanted Steph, Klay, and Draymond back, and they wanted Steve Kerr back, and they wanted that core back. And so at that point, and I view Wiggins and Looney as part of that as well, extensions of those three. So if you're saying you're bringing the big three back, and it's kind of already implied that you want and need Wiggins plus Looney in their roles, well, how do you get better? How do you get better at that point? Well, the only two players on the roster that have any kind of trade value are Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga. And because of Poole's cap number now and the way that he played last year, you're right. That number or that the desire for him, I think, shrinks somewhat. And Kuminga becomes somebody where you also have to pencil in a role, you have to pencil in, where does he fit next year? And here's the thing. I know I've gotten a lot of flack for JD doesn't like Kuminga. JD doesn't like Kuminga. It's not that at all. I think Kuminga's super talented. I think he's got all-star potential. The question, though, that the Warriors have to ask themselves is, can he be a role player on a championship caliber team next year while he's in the playoffs, while he develops into whatever this high-end ceiling that he has is? And, this year he was unable to do that. And if he also then pouted about it and then demanded a guaranteed role. So I think those two things, to me, it's one thing to, hey, you didn't have a good series against Sacramento through the first 4 games. You didn't play. Well, then you basically lacked accountability because your camp says, hey, I want a guaranteed role next year. You're putting it on, you're basically playing to the fan perception among the group that is pro Kuminga and saying, well, it's not my fault. It's the coaching staff's fault. I need a guaranteed role next year or I want to be traded. So you're at that point, to me, you're drawing a line in the sand to where the Warriors have to look and say, well, we couldn't play this kid in the playoffs. And now he wants out. If we can't guarantee that he's going to play in the playoffs, we've got no reason to believe that he is going to do the things necessary next year to be a guarantee. So then we got to move him. And there's a lot of upside tied to him as well and all of that. So I think he becomes somebody that's natural to shop because they have to try to get better. They can say Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, Looney, want them all back, but that's great. That's price of admission. Like, you got to go get better now beyond that. And so I think Kuminga is the one thing, or the one of the 2 areas where they potentially can. As far as using him to move up, what I thought about using him to move up, Larry, is that it opens up a new group of teams for the Warriors to do business with. I think there are a group of teams that maybe want Kuminga, but the Warriors don't necessarily want or desire or need players on those teams' rosters. There isn't maybe a match. If you trade Kuminga for a high pick, if you can get a top 7 pick for him, well, then to me, you open up a bunch more teams that might want to come up at 6 or 7 and get the guy that they want, right? It's infinite at that point. There could be all these different players on the board that a team wants to come up. So I think rather than, to me, it's Kuminga to try to get a pick that's more desirable to more of the league than, just Kuminga alone. And I also think it's easier to throw a pick in a bigger deal than it would be to, force or shoehorn Kuminga into a deal with Poole or with the 19 pick or with, future picks or however the Warriors want to do it. So I think they're evaluating what the worth would be on the high end of moving up and dealing him for a pick to where they could move up and then trade that pick. It's kind of like, hey, you trade Wiseman for 5 second-round picks, and then you use the 5 second-round picks to go get Gary Payton II. This would be the different version of that. This would be you use Kuminga to get a top 6-7 pick, and then you use that pick to go get the player that you really want that can be that playoff caliber, young veteran type player that you need that can help improve the roster.
It's really interesting on a lot of fronts because if you look at the NBA draft in the top 10, it's 1 international player, Victor Wembanyama, and then 9 freshmen. That it's all college freshmen. Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Anthony Black, Charis Walker, Ozur Thompson, Grady Dick, Derek Lively. They're all college freshmen. So the question is, if they were going to move Kuminga, is it to get an asset to try to make a bigger deal with, or are they potentially looking at some player in the top 10 that they feel like, yeah, he's a freshman, but he's got a more developed skill set? Now, the only 2 guys to me that
I wouldn't trust that, would you?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't even know who's making the pick. So it's like, if you told me that Jerry West liked some guy in the top 10, okay. You told me that Don Nelson likes some guy in the top 10, thinks he's going to be a star. Okay. But Larry Harris is the only guy in the room whose opinion I think even should be listened to. And, is he have that level of a track record? To me, the only two guys that I could picture them moving Kuminga and plugging in the rookie would be Jordan Hawkins from Connecticut, who's in the NBA draft.net mock that I'm looking at right in front of me. They have him going 11 to Orlando. Now, I watched Connecticut in the tournament. This kid's a 6'5" guard with just a really, really, really nice shot. And he's a pure shooter. I mean, he's a tremendous shooter, and he's a sophomore. He's a little bit more ready to play, I think, than Jonathan Kuminga. And there's a lot of upside to like there, and he's got a great shot. The other guy is Grady Dick from Kansas, who was also a freshman. But I see a little bit of Klay Thompson. I see a little bit of Kevin Huerter. Grady Dick, I think, is the best pure shooter in the entire draft. He's more than just a catch and shoot guy. I think he's got more upside. Something to me, he's better than Huerter, but probably not as good as Klay. But, I think he's in that range. So if you could trade for a player, if I'm right, and Grady Dick is, Bill Self says he may be the best perimeter shooter he's ever had at Kansas, and he's had some damn good players. So that kind of makes you kind of pause for a second. Then in the Chicago workouts, the guy played incredible. And so it's, if you felt like you could get a player who was a skilled player, who was somewhere between Kevin Huerter and Klay Thompson, he's not the defender that Klay is, but he's a better all-around player than Huerter. Would you trade Jonathan Kuminga at age 21 to get that player? I mean, that's kind of yes. To me, you would. So if you felt like if you could get a player that was better than Huerter, but not quite Klay, and you could get Kuminga, Kuminga could fetch that player in the top 10, you would do it.
Well, I mean, if you know that he can play for you this year, like that's like, to me, that's what it, like, if he can't play for you this year, or you're wondering, like, that goes back to what I had said to you before when I asked you, do you trust it? And that's the thing. Like, I don't know, to be perfectly honest, if I trust the Warriors at this point to draft anybody that's going to come in and be immediately playable like that. If you're moving up to get somebody, especially somebody young, even though shooting is shooting, right? And I agree with you. I think Grady Dick is the best shooter in the draft, but how do we know that his defense isn't so atrocious that he's not going to be on the floor? It just, so that to me is where, I don't think you're moving up if you're the Warriors to make a pick. I think you're moving up to get somebody else to come up and take that pick from you, and you're going to take somebody off of somebody else's roster in a package, whether that's a package involving Jordan Poole or whether that's a package involving somebody else to get the financial components of it all to work.
Brian Iglesias says, he says, if the Warriors are serious about extending Steph in the Big Three's championship window, they need to stop drafting projects and bring in an impact player or trade for an impactful veteran. I agree, but all I would say to that is that you have an owner who has his own draft board, and you have an owner who I really believe would love to put his kid in the general manager's seat. And this is a way for him to show the world that his kid knows basketball and his kid is worthy of this. You know what I'm saying? This is an opportunity. I agree with you. I agree with Brian. If this was just about the team and winning and this and that, but I think there's more going on here. I think Joe is trying to move out Bob and move in his kid and really do the job himself through his kids. And this is not, to me, if you pass altogether on the draft or trade that pick for a veteran, then you can't say to everybody, look, my kid. But if your kid picks Grady Dick and Grady Dick becomes an NBA star, becomes some awesome player, or, somebody in the lottery, and you're all of a sudden that guy becomes a difference maker. Now you can say, hey, you know what? That's Kent. That's Kurt. They just did that. And now maybe you're giving that guy a chance to kind of establish himself as an NBA personnel executive going forward. So maybe I'm not seeing that the right way, but I think I am. And I think that Joe wants to take that opportunity. And I've already made it clear to you. I think if they whiff, they'll pretend, yeah, we just did it. And it'll be the proverbial nobody knows who made the call. But if it's a great pick, then it's going to be like, hey, I know you guys don't realize this, but, Kurt and Kent made this pick, and then it'll be like, oh, well, in that case, then you know what? Maybe Kurt and Kent ought to run the show. Yeah, I agree. And now we have Kurt and Kent running the show. That's just my feeling on it, that we may see something like that. How about if the Warriors didn't make a move, stayed at 19? Then what? I'll give you some of the interesting names in this neighborhood. Trace Jackson Davis, that's Dale Davis's kid. He can't shoot from the perimeter, but he's a passer, rebounder, shot blocker, athlete, and he's about close to 250 pounds. And he could be like, he could be your guy who takes over for Draymond Green. There's also Leonard Miller, who's got a lot of incredible traits to him. I mean, he's 6'10", he's 215, but he's a willowy Garnett-like fluid athlete who really had a good year in the G League. Last year, he went to Chicago, played so poorly that he pulled out of the draft. This year, after a year in the G League, he was noticeably better in Chicago, and he's got kind of a KG type frame. I mean, he's 6'10", 6'11", but with guard skills. I mean, true handle. There's also Keegan Murray's younger brother, his twin brother, Chris Murray, who's got a beautiful. He's if you wonder what he's like, he's a lot like Keegan.
Left-handed Keegan.
Yeah, he's a lefty, but he's maybe an inch shorter, but man, very polished perimeter shooter. Lot to like there. And then there's a couple other guys that really are intriguing to me. Ben Shepherd from Belmont is a 6'6" two guard. Now, Belmont is not a high level of play, Conference USA, but he's good. I mean, there's no question. He looked great in Chicago. Very, very polished player. The guy that I'm super fired up on right now is a guy named Sidi Sissoko, who played in France. And he's like a 6'8" former point guard who's now kind of moved to the 2, had a really good year in the G League. And watching Sissoko, I mean, I see some Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's got real handle. He's got real size. He's nice. I mean, he might be kind of a combo 1-2, but he might be able to let Steph play off the ball from time to time. He's really interesting. And then I love this kid, Tristan Vukovic from Serbia, who's got a beautiful shot and looked incredible shooting the basketball. In Chicago. He's an Italian kid, I believe. He's a Serbian kid who spent time in Italy and played for Real Madrid this year, and then went to Chicago, and he was awesome. I mean, he lit it up, hit threes. He's got a little bit of Dirk in his game as far as, he's a great shooting 7-footer who looks like so pure around the top of the key, the free throw line extended, the elbow. He just really looks like an incredibly skilled stretch 4, stretch 5. So those are the guys that I'd be looking at 19. What do you think? If you're at 19, is there somebody there that you think that intrigues them, or what do you think they're looking at there?
Yeah, I like Chris Murray a lot. And that was the first name that was going to bring up. I think I brought his name up to you in the past. I think go with experienced players. I was jotting down as far as the guys you mentioned as well, because I know we had talked, I think, at 49ers camp about who's been in to work out among the players that the Warriors could bring in. And among the players that they, Ben Shepherd was somebody they had work out. Trace Jackson Davis was somebody that worked out. They, to my knowledge, didn't have Chris Murray in. They didn't have any of the other names in that that you had mentioned either.
Jaime Jaquez they worked him out. He's very polished player from UCLA, swingman from UCLA.
Yeah. So, but Chris Murray is somebody that I like. I know it's not been a popular name among the fans, but Jet Howard from Michigan is another guy, who's a shooter with some size to him. Now he isn't quite 20 either, but I think they're looking for, and it's been reported, players that fit their style of play, that are ready to come in and contribute. No more projects. So if anybody you think is if you like somebody that projects to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or a cross between Kevin Huerter and Klay Thompson, then that guy better be able to come in and do it in an effective manner. And we know what the template is and what the bar is. And that's why I'm convinced. I don't think the Warriors, I think they would love to make the pick, but I don't think it's a lock that they're going to make the pick. Like, I think the Warriors would love to pick somebody that they know is going to be cost effective, that they know can be plug and play, because they need depth. But I also think they're going to be looking at, can you get young veteran type players in a deal that can reshape, let's say, the 6 through 9 spots on the roster if possible. But Jet Howard, somebody that comes to mind, and Chris Murray, somebody that I think would just, he isn't Keegan Murray was the 4th pick in the draft last year. Like, Keegan Murray's a better player than his brother, and a better prospect, certainly more athletic, even though Keegan Murray at times doesn't look all that athletic. He's more athletic than his brother. He's a better shooter than his brother, even though his brother's a decent, good shooter in his own right. But I think he does fit the mold of somebody that could be plug and play immediately. And that's what the Warriors are going to be looking for, especially at that wing type position.
Jay Tance's topic on 95.7 The Game today: should the Warriors go after Bradley Beal? And rumors about Jonathan Kuminga to trade. The Bradley Beal thing is, a lot of times linked to Klay Thompson. And I don't know how we have not discussed Klay Thompson. I personally feel that Klay Thompson, who's coming into his final year under contract, $43.2 million this year. I don't know. I love Klay Thompson. And it's funny, Matt Nahagan came in, he said, man, the reaction from the fans to Klay Thompson and the idea of moving him is just, people are just sickened by it. And they're just like mad about it. And it's like, how dare you guys bring up moving on from Klay Thompson? And I get it, because, I think it's Klay and Steph and Draymond to a lesser degree are kind of like Joe Montana and Dwight Clark to Niner fans of the 80s. It's like, you were bad forever, then you got good. And Joe and Dwight were your first love, and damn you for anybody who wants to say move on to either of them. And that's the same thing here. The Warriors won in 75, but let's be honest, if you were around for the 75 title, you're 60. And so the vast majority of the Warrior fans, the Warriors were horrendous their whole life, and then they got good under Steph and Klay and Draymond. And this has been easily the greatest era in the history of the franchise. And Klay Thompson is beloved. And how dare you even suggest that you would move on from Klay Thompson? And I understand that. I do. But I also feel like Klay Thompson is a guy that is not going to be able to handle the twilight of his career with easily. So I think that he was such an easy personality on the way up, but I think he's going to be a nightmarish personality on the way down.
I've already seen it.
I asked Steve Kerr, sitting in for Damon, I think earlier this year, in one of the interviews I did with Rado. I'm like, what do you think of bringing Klay off the bench? And he scoffed. He immediately scoffed. And Steve doesn't scoff very much, but he scoffed. And it wasn't because it was a stupid freaking question. It was because that can't be broached, because Klay's that sensitive, and he can't even, he's got to scoff. Otherwise he probably loses face in his relationship with Klay. And I just feel like Klay can't handle his decline, and he's not the defender that he was. And his prolific 3-point season camouflaged his regression from 2. And I just really feel like Klay Thompson can't handle the decline of his career. And it's always going to be about trying to get back. And he seems like he's always agitated. He's pointing to his ring finger, and he's always talking about what he did and what he did and what he, and it's like, I love Klay Thompson. I love him on his boat, and he, Rocco, and you watch it and reads the CC Times, and there's all kinds of things to love about Klay Thompson, but I don't think he's going to age well. I don't think he's the guy. Like, he makes 43. I don't want to pay him 30. People are like, oh, he needs a haircut, give him 30. No, I don't want to pay him 30. I want to pay him 20. And I don't think that he wants to be paid even 30. So it's like, it's the same reason that companies hire people out of college instead of people in their 50s, because they don't want somebody there who used to make a couple $100,000. They want somebody there who's going to run through walls for them and who doesn't know any better. And I think the same thing here with Klay Thompson. I think that, he doesn't want to take 30. He doesn't want to take, he'll take 30, but even then I think he's going to be kind of bitter about it. And like this year, people are like, well, why not? He's on the last year of his deal. Just wait till the end of the year. Yeah, but no, because what's going to happen is it's going to be like, why didn't you extend me? And he's going to be pouting and bitter and resentful. And I just don't want pouting, bitter, resentful Klay, who used to be better and isn't what he used to be. And I'll take less, but I still think I'm worth this and I'm worth that. It's like, I'd rather I think he'll be able to handle his career decline easier in a different locker room. And I know there's a lot of Warrior fans that would hate me for saying it, but I honestly feel that way. Give me your assessment of Klay, where you're at with him and where you think the team's at.
Well, we already saw the inability to handle a little decline be a problem. I mean, I thought he had a horrible attitude the whole year. I mentioned this a lot during the season, just the fact that, it got to a point where he played so badly at the beginning that when he started to play better, it felt like every game where he did play well during that stretch of a couple of months where he played well and shot it well, it was almost like he wanted to get up on the scorer's table and just shout out F you to everybody who had ever said, hey, dude, you're not playing well, even though he played horrifically for about a month and a half to 2 months to begin the season. So he just played with an edge, a chip on his shoulder, a bad energy, a negative vibe. Like, it was just an anger. He played very angry, and not angry in a motivated way, angry in kind of a petulant way. And I thought it was interesting. At the end of the season, Steve Kerr called him out. He said he didn't come into camp in shape. I thought that was telling, and went on to say, hey, he's got to use the offseason better than he did last year and come in and understand that at where he is in his career, he has to be ready at the beginning of training camp, like, working in July and August to get ready in September to be there at the final week of September, first week of October. So I think Kerr kind of called him out. As far as the rest of it goes, Steph, Klay, and Draymond all want to play together one more year. So, like, they're not moving off Klay Thompson now. Like, that's just it. Now, what's he worth next year? And you don't want to pay him 30. I think that's why you do nothing with Klay Thompson this year. I think you play it out at 43. You see if you see if he has a better offseason and that leads to a better season. Like, to me, we're going to know after next season exactly where Klay Thompson is at and exactly where he's worth. If he comes back and he's a freaking all-star, then you're going to have a conundrum on your hands, because he's probably going to want 35, 40 million again. And you may be uncomfortable with that. But if he comes back and he's pretty good for a couple of months and he's pretty bad for a couple of months and he struggles in the playoffs again, well, then I think it becomes an easy decision if you're the Warriors to say, hey, we'd love to have you, but it is going to have to be closer to 20 than 30 or 35 or whatever it is. I also think Klay, in a way, could be tied to Jordan Poole. If the Warriors don't deal Poole, they are in an interesting time frame with the fact that Poole's got a few more years on his deal. Obviously, it's going to kick in this year. 4 years is going to kick in this year. So if it either doesn't work out with Clay, where he declines and isn't even the player he was this year, or it gets to a point where it's so contentious that he plays well and wants this and you don't want to pay him that this time next year, but Jordan Poole is still on the team and bounces back, then there's a natural transition to, well, maybe Jordan Poole just becomes the starting two guard at that point moving forward, and you let Klay Thompson go. And then depending upon what you do with Draymond Green, all of a sudden you've got a little more salary flexibility that maybe wasn't there with Clay coming off the books, and then you can maneuver, and then maybe you can get back into the free agent game with a move or two, depending upon what, how this year plays out. Not this year, but next year with that 43 coming off the books. And again, if Draymond's number either goes down, like, to me, there would be some moves that could be made to become a free agent attracting type of a team again, if you wanted to do it at that point differently around Steph Curry, assuming Curry is still at the level that he's been at these last couple of years. So I think that's the case to be made for letting it play out with Klay Thompson for this season. I wouldn't be looking to trade him. They don't want to trade him because those three want to ride one more time together. That's, like, to me, that's already a foregone conclusion. And Kerr wants it and all of that. So there's no, hey, you're going to trade Klay Thompson in my mind, unless there's a complete shift in thinking from where things were at a month ago. But I could see them, looking at that point, what happens next year if they hang on to Jordan Poole, and having that be sort of a natural pivot point. The Bradley Beal thing, Bradley Beal is... I'm
not a Bradley Beal guy.
Like, I feel
he's small. He's 6'4".
He's small. You took the words right out of my mouth. He's more of a combo guard than people think. Like, he's not a combo guard. He's been a 2, but he's got
an undersized 2 who shoots a ton.
And he's got more of it. Like, you can put the ball in his hands and he can kind of get his own. Like, he's got a little bit of 1.5 to him as well. Like, he's not a point guard by any means, but he's got he can be a lead guard almost as a backup.
I think he's more of a 2 than Poole.
Well,
I think Poole to me is a combo. I think he's more of a 2.
He's more of a 2 that can handle. Yeah, he's more of a 2. It's kind of, he reminds me of a smaller Ray Allen in the handle skill set, if that makes sense. Like, he can handle it a little bit in the half court and kind of get his own that way. But I think
he's expensive. His contract goes way high.
You're going
million.
Like, to me, you don't want Bradley Beal making what Bradley Beal's making 3, 2, 3, 4. Like that. Like, to me, that's a non-starter now. I wouldn't be looking at, because you're taking him for what, another 4 years, right? Or 3 years or what? Yeah. I mean, it's 4 at big money, at
50
40
plus million.
Yeah, I would say 50. Yeah, I would say I thought it was high 40s, but yeah, 50 plus. So, like, to me, that you're not doing that, because at that point you're sunk. Like, forget about Steph, Clay, Draymond era. You're sunk maybe beyond the Steph, Clay. You're sunk maybe beyond the Steph, Clay, Draymond era at that point. So yeah. I'm out on Bradley Beal.
Yeah, I'm not. He's not my jam. Brian Iglesias says, when was the last time you saw Clay make a mid-range jumper at the elbow? It's either a contested bad 3-pointer or a fadeaway off 1 foot. He could benefit from getting back to the fundamentals. I definitely kind of agree with that. I just feel like Clay at many times this year kind of shot them out. Polk says package Clay and Poole together. Okay, so what are you going to add? Well, you want Porzingis or something like that coming back?
You don't have a 2-guard on your roster.
Yeah, Clay shouldn't. 808 Niners says Clay shouldn't have to take a pay cut to stay a Warrior. If he can make $40 million as a free agent, then go get it. But he needs to be real about where he is in his career, and he's not. I mean, that's essentially my point, is that he's not real about where he is in his career.
No, and I understand why he didn't play in the offseason. I mean, his thought process was long run in the playoffs. I think there was a psychological component to the fact that he worked out pretty hard in the rehab year and was playing a lot of pickup, and pickup was what got him hurt with the second injury after he had worked his way back. And so I think he's fearful of, I don't want to have that happen again, because he saw firsthand how it delayed his career to the point that it did. So I kind of understand where he's coming from as far as that goes, Larry. But you can't, as a 33-year-old player, going to be 34, I believe, come into a season and put yourself in a position where you're out of shape or you're not ready to roll. And so I'm willing to, because I think he's going to be on the roster. I don't want to say give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm giving him the benefit to be a more polished version of what he was last year. Like, to me, that was the biggest problem with Clay was the high highs and the low lows. Like, the lows were horrendous. Like, he had highs. He didn't have as many highs as he did before, but he had the exceptional, amazing 8 for 12 3-point games, a bunch. But his bad games were 3 for 15. His bad games were 4 for 19. Like, his bad games were so bad with what this team had going for it, which, the Warriors needed to be more buttoned up, and they had less margin for error. And Clay playing the same way he played 5 years ago wasn't going to work on the nights where he was bad. On the nights where he was bad, they were getting beat because he was bad. Like, there was a inability to recognize, Larry, the fact that I got to be a little more conscientious about the shot selections on the night where I'm not hitting. And I think the Warriors, to a man, I thought Clay really, he just exemplified everything. Their whole team was kind of that way. Like, we've done it this way for years and we've won titles. And so we're defiant and we're going to keep doing it this way. And damn it, we're going to win doing this way. And it's like, there was this fight, I thought, all year, and especially in the playoffs. I thought in the Sacramento series, first 2 games, they're going to do it their way, and they're going to do it, and they're down 0-2. It's like, and then game 3, game 4, a little calmer, a little more attention to, hey, we're vulnerable in this series. This Kings team can beat us. Then they win 3 straight. And then what happens in game 6? They go back to chucking it, kicking it around the building, whatever, terrible defense, and they get their ass kicked in game 6, and they got to play. And then they go play game 7, and they grind through. Like, there was always this pull of every time they realized they had to go about it a different way and they had success, they didn't want to do it anymore, whether it was too hard and it was taking too much out of them, or whether there was this defiance to the fact that they were still capable of doing what they had always done. It just felt like they were always going to toe that line of wanting to do it their way versus wanting to do it the right way. And eventually doing it their way was going to get them beat. And we saw it got them beat against the Lakers, and it almost got them beat against the Kings.
2 last ones before we finish up here. Jordan Poole. I just think Jordan Poole's got to go. I know there are people saying, well, Jordan might be back. Jordan's saying he might be back. Yeah. Slater had the report saying that Joe's willing to move anybody that's not named Steph Curry, which made me think of Klay Thompson. But let's talk about Poole for a second. I just think that Poole is totally overrated. They paid him way too much money. They paid him based on that 25 game stretch without Steph, and he went off. But he doesn't play well with your best player, and he doesn't have a real honest look at who he is. So, like, Jordan on this team needs to put it on the deck and go to the rim, but he doesn't want to absorb that kind of punishment. I think deep down he might be kind of soft, so he doesn't want to go to the lane. He doesn't want to take those hits. He doesn't want to take that. He doesn't want to take on that physicality. So that's what he's good at, driving and going to the free throw line and making free throws. But he decided he didn't want to do that, so he stopped driving. He didn't ever go to the free throw line. And then he just started hoisting threes, and he thinks he's Steph Curry, and he's not Steph Curry. Steph Curry, he thinks he wants to take these heat check threes from 7 feet beyond the arc. Shot 32% from 3, shot 25% from 3 in the playoffs. So he's in love with doing things he's not good at, and he's not committed to doing the things on the floor that he is good at. So this guy's mentally beat up, and it's time to move off of him. It was a huge mistake giving him all that money, and now it's just a matter of what can they get for him. They're going to have to include other assets to move him. Who wants Jordan Poole What can they get for Jordan Poole?
Yeah, I think they need to look to move him. The only reason I'd be reluctant at all is just the fact that Steph Curry is somebody that I would project to miss between a quarter and a third of the season. He missed 26 games. And Jordan Poole, and this is the part that Slater was right about in his reporting, is the fact that Jordan Poole played well when he started. When Steph was out, he played well.
Right.
When Clay was out, he played.
Yeah.
When Clay was out, he played well. Like it. So, and they were able to win. And if they don't go 14-12 without Steph, they aren't even in the playoffs. They're a play-in team, and who knows what happens. Maybe they're worse than a play-in team if they don't win. And there have been years where they haven't been able to win without Steph. So there is a value. And the one caution, I'm with you, by the way. To me, you look to move them. I think you.
I like how Robert Phoenix. Here we go. The Poole hate flows. Yeah. Well, sorry for noticing the guy's got huge flaws to his game. Sorry.
To me, I put Poole in the same category as Kuminga in the sense that if you're committed to 3 to 5 players already, and everybody, how do you get? Well, the only way you get better is to try to move him. So to me, it's like, if you want to change the roster composition 6 through 10, 5 through 8, however you want to do it, Poole and Kuminga are your best avenues to do it. So I put Poole in that category. The one thing I would say, though, Larry, is they have to be cognizant of the fact that Steph is going to miss 20 games or more a year. And how do you build a roster that's good enough in the regular season to get through that? When you already struggled to have who's the number 2 option? And I know Clay stepped up big when Curry was out. Poole had stepped up big when Curry was out. Like that was part of it. But you got to keep in the back of your mind, if you're the Warriors, as you build out the roster, if you trade Jordan Poole, are you putting a team together that can go 10-10 without Steph Curry over a 20-game stretch, or go 8-12 over a 20-game stretch without Steph Curry, as opposed to going 4-16? Because if you go 4-16, then you're screwed at that point. You go 4-16, all of a sudden, in the other 60 games, you got to go. You got to go 40-20 to be a playoff team. And so you either got to be 40-20 when you have everybody. You got to be good enough to do that, or you got to be good enough to be 8-12 when you don't have everybody. That kind of thing. So I'm with you. I think you look to move them, but there's a risk that moving them makes you more vulnerable to the games without Curry, in the same vein that there's a risk in moving Kuminga that he could turn out to be an all-star.
Darren Lee says, did you guys see Sai's tweet regarding Jama's departure so ominous? I didn't see Sai's tweet. Let me check it out.
Well, he went to Toronto. He went back to Toronto. Yeah.
And does that mean that Kerr's a short timer? Does that mean that Kerr may want out? I mean, otherwise, why would he leave Kerr's staff? I mean, does he want to be? I know he came from Toronto, right?
Yeah, yes.
So maybe he's got some connection there. What's your read on it? As I look up Sai's tweet on it.
My first thought on it was that, Jama's big contribution was player development. And my first read on it was, well, maybe the Warriors aren't going to be as committed to young player development anymore because they're going to trade their young players. and that he feels that his usage is going to be more beneficial in an organization where, if you look at Toronto, they're almost going the other way. They've got Scotty Barnes, who's a young emerging player, really good young player that's only going to continue to get better, that they took with a high pick a couple of years back. And then they've also got, the potential. They're the team that everybody thinks is going to get younger and rebuild and go into that mode around Scotty Barnes. So I think familiarity with the organization is one. I think a team that's going to go from veteran to young, or at least projects to go from veteran to young, is part of it. Again, in conjunction with the familiarity that he has with that organization. But I took it, just first thing that popped into my head is the Warriors are probably going to go more proven player, proven talent route, and that means that Jama isn't as necessary or going to have as big a role as he did before. He was as quality as it gets as an assistant coach on the player development side as there is, by the way. I can't say enough good things about him.
What player did he develop?
Well, that's a good question. That's a great. No, I mean Andrew Wiggins.
I'm not trying to stick it to you.
I know you weren't. I know you weren't. Andrew Wiggins is, and I had an answer. Andrew Wiggins is the one that's been the most out there. Like he really helped him with the handle and the right shots to take and that kind of thing. Everybody thinks player development is getting in the gym and hammering out. Sometimes player development is looking at your shot chart and saying, hey, dude, you make these shots when you take them, you don't make these, so take more of these. And, that was one thing that the Warriors really focused in on with Wiggins is specific areas on the court where he had been a really high efficiency player, and they try to get him the ball more in those areas. Hey, shocker. That's, it's some real basketball science there, but he was big with Wiggins. He worked a lot with Kuminga. He worked a lot with the young players that the Warriors had here over these last couple of years and was highly thought of, but it didn't quite pan out, I don't think, at the level that anybody is truly comfortable with. And there's a lot of different reasons why. Everybody tries to wonder why.
Well, it might be more money, right? Because what I'm reading here, the Raptors are hiring Pat Delaney from the Wizards and Jama.
Yeah, they're revamping their
as the top assistant. So maybe the top assistant makes quite a bit more.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. Or maybe Kerr isn't going to be here long term. Maybe Kerr's going to be a one and done situation. Maybe, because Kerr's in a lame duck situation. We don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that Joe would not want Kerr long term. But maybe Kerr said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this one more year and then I'm going to jet. And then maybe he said, you know what? I've got an opportunity here to kind of solidify myself in a different organization. I'll just take that. But it is the Cy Sots tweeted this out. He says, a Warriors insider I trust, the incredibly was capitalized, had this to say about the departure of Warriors assistant coach Jama Mahalela. He said, the loss of Jama is big. Things are falling apart. Wow. Connor Letourneau says that Jama's departure for the Raptors is such a big blow for the Warriors. In addition to leading Golden State's player development program, he also oversaw their rotation. So there's some belief that this is a significant thing.
He took over some of Mike Brown's duties in that respect. I do remember that. The player development was the big deal. He did take over the rotation card, basically. Mike Brown had developed, and I mean, he had developed this kind of chart that they used to map out minutes, going into each game based on the opponent and who's available and that kind of thing. And that was along with the defense. Mike Brown's big thing was kind of keeping Kerr organized on the rotation. And so Jama took that role over with the departure of Brown. But yeah, he was mainly the player development guy.
Jesus has got this one. He says, Larry, how about Bridges and Finney Smith for Poole, Kuminga, and some other players? Talking about a deal with Brooklyn. I don't think Bridges is going anywhere.
Now, Bridges looks like he might be a franchise player. Like he looks more with the opportunity in Brooklyn, like he could be a franchise player. It looked like he was a role player. Maybe he was a role player because he had to be a role player with Phoenix based on, the other players that they had there, Booker and Paul and Ayton, a lot of guys who want the ball in their hands. But yeah, I don't think Bridges is going anywhere, but Bridges and Finney Smith are two players that the Warriors would love to get their hands on. But yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere.
It's hilarious, filling in on 95.7 that you guys are so Warrior centric that if you throw out any name at all that's interesting, that is in the, that you guys have already kind of gone through and decided, no way, no how. It's like people just start getting morally offended on the text line. I threw out Ben Simmons today because to me, Ben Simmons is, once you're talking about trading guys like Steph or trading guys like Clay, Clay's making $40 million, right? And then people are talking about Clay and Poole together, those guys combined make $70 million. So you have to kind of look at the highest paid guys in the sport unless you want to put together some 18-player package or something. And so I was just looking at the highest paid guys, and I saw Ben Simmons making 37.8, and people were just like, dude, Ben Simmons, oh, you're a joke. But people see things only as they are and not potentially as they could be. I don't know what Simmons' future holds because he's just so skill deficient, and he's literally hiding on the floor in plain sight. So, I mean, it's like really, I get the pushback on Ben Simmons. I do. But let me throw a few big name guys at you, and you tell me, just give me like 10 seconds on each guy if what you think of them, as far as this is all about in relation to coming to the Warriors, right? Okay. LeBron, 46.6 million.
I'd take LeBron in a heartbeat if you could get him. That, to me, that's not a you're going to trade for LeBron. That's a LeBron ends up
next year.
Wants to play for the minimum next year and play with Steph for a year. Like, to me, but yeah, if you could get LeBron, you get LeBron for sure.
What if he says you got to draft Bronny?
You draft Bronny.
Okay. See, I think LeBron's so beat up at this point, I wouldn't want to touch him. But
to me, I'd love to have if LeBron was a free agent right now, and I know he's not, but if LeBron was a free agent right now and was like, you know what, I want to take a year before Bronny's in the NBA and play with Steph Curry, because I just think it would be awesome. We've been going up against each other all these years in finals and playoffs and all this stuff, and he's won titles and I've won titles. I respect the hell out of his game. Let's just end the beef between the Steph camp of fans and my camp of fans and win a title together. I think that would be cool. It'd be our fifth for both of us. Like, if LeBron wanted to do that and come to the Warriors for the minimum, in a freaking heartbeat.
I'm not there. I would say not only no, I'd say fuck no. You teabagged our guy in the finals, and it led to us losing the finals, and we're going to remember. So I'm going to say no. Bradley Beal, we already covered.
Yeah, no.
How about the Clipper duo? Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. If you could make a deal with moving major salaries around, are you intrigued by either of those guys? They both have 1 year left at $45 million, and they both have $48 million player options, which they will exercise. So really, you got 2 years at close to $95 million.
I'd take Kawhi. He's a champion when he's right. And I mean, I would take Kawhi. I would not take Paul George.
Lillard. Have a Lillard.
Lillard doesn't fit. Doesn't fit. He's a point guard, lead guard. He's Steph. Lillard should go somewhere though. Like Lillard, whether it's Miami, I know he didn't seem keen on the idea of going to Boston. I think Miami would be a great fit for Lillard. I think there's some teams out there that could get him and be in a really good position to possibly contend. I think Philly would be good for Lillard. I think there's some options there.
How about AD? He makes $40.6 million. The only reason that I even bring his name up is because Klay Thompson and the LA connection. His dad's the announcer. He would love being in LA. And also, I'm looking at the Lakers, and I don't see how the Lakers change anything up without moving AD. It just seems like if they're going to make any dramatic improvements, AD's got to be on the move. Is there any way you could see AD with the Warriors?
No, I just don't see the Lake. I mean, I know you said I'd want him if I'm the Warriors. How many years does he have in his deal?
He's got 1 year and then 43 player option for the next year. He's got 1 year, basically 2 years, probably 2 years and $83 million left.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't think the Lakers would do it, but you ask me only Warriors side of it. I mean, only the Warriors side of it. I'd consider it since we're having fun, because I think you could go at that point, and you'd have to trade Clay to do it. I know we already said we're not trading Clay, but you have to trade Clay to do it. I don't think the Lakers would do it, but I mean, you could put Davis in there and then Jordan Poole becomes the starter. You're better defensively. You still got Steph. I'd probably think about that one in our hypothetical world.
Tobias Harris, $39.2 million. That's a ton for Tobias Harris.
How many more years?
That's it. This is it. He's done at the end of this year. No options of any kind. He's unrestricted.
That's what I would think of. I would think about that for Poole.
Okay.
I would think about that. Not for Clay, but I would think about that for Poole. He's a good player. He's a good player. He's a role player. He shouldn't be a $40 million player, but I think, I think something came to my mind watching the Nuggets in the finals. And I probably shouldn't compare these two because Aaron Gordon's a defender and an athlete. But Aaron Gordon, how the Nuggets got Aaron Gordon? They got Aaron Gordon for Gary Harris.
Yeah, there you go.
RJ Hampton and a first round pick.
Right.
And Aaron Gordon was a number one type option with Orlando and a high draft pick. But areas in which you can really help your team are when you take that high draft pick that maybe is a number one option on a bad team and you make them a number 3 or a number 4 option on a really good team, but they've got talent that plays, NBA talent that plays. Those are the types of expensive players that I would be in on. And I don't think Tobias Harris is necessarily in that category, but Tobias Harris made me think of Aaron Gordon and kind of think where the Warriors need to try to be creative if they're going to use Jordan Poole as a chip. Find somebody that was a high pick that might be in a losing situation, that's getting paid more than their team is comfortable with, that wants a little bit of a redo, and bring a guy that maybe is
expiring. He's on an expiring. So this is another way for Joe to get out from underneath that money. Let's be honest. He can let Tobias Harris walk at the end of the year. And
I like Tobias Harris. He's a really good. I don't know about Tobias Harris as a playoff player, but Tobias Harris is the kind of guy that you need to get through the regular season and be in a good position to set yourself up for the playoffs.
Zach LaVine.
I think he makes too much money too far out now. Right?
40, 43, 45. Yeah, I think it may even go longer than that.
Yeah, the skill set makes sense. I think that's an interesting one, but I think it's too much because he's the kind of guy now that hamstrings you beyond. I think the Warriors are in this like 2-year window now. You could say maybe 3 with Steph's contract, but I think they're in this little 2-year, can you cobble it together for one more run kind of a thing, but you don't really want anything to go too screwy with the finances beyond that. If that makes sense, like you're willing to stay extremely high luxury tax and all that for one more year, maybe 2. So you're all right. You'll trade Jordan Poole for a like salary and try to go on, but you don't like. I would not want, if I'm the Warriors, a bunch of these salaries that are going to be beyond 25 of where they screw you out of your rebuild whenever it actually becomes time to rebuild.
Siakam at 37.8 expiring.
Again, that's a Jordan Poole one. I would do, and people are going to be crazy. People are going to say, JD, you're out of your freaking mind. I would consider Poole and Kuminga for Siakam.
Yeah, I would too. How about Miles Turner? 20.9, 19.9, 2 years left.
I don't love Miles Turner, but Miles Turner is that he might
He's
fit
a big man who can shoot it.
He's a big man that can shoot it and block shots. So his skill set does fit. The only way you can get him, though, is if you're taking back more because he only makes 20. So you're going to have to, if Poole goes, let's say, in that kind of a deal, and would they want to put Poole with Halliburton, you'd almost have to take Buddy Hield back as well.
Ugh.
Who, yeah, exactly. So you probably have to take, because you said Turner's expiring, right?
No, Turner's expiring next year. So he's got 2 years. He's got this year at 20.9. He's got next year at 19.9. Then he's unrestricted.
Yeah. So I think his skill set plays, but you're probably going to have to take back a tough contract if you're going to send Poole out, because they'd be taking a tough contract, even though he's a younger player.
Cat. How about Cat? 36, 50, 54. It starts to get really ugly.
It starts to get really ugly, and he's talented. And I didn't. Did you hear what he said today?
No.
He said today, and I want to get. I should bring up.
I think I might have seen
it was about the Nuggets. He said that the Timberwolves' run to make the playoffs last year was more special than the Nuggets championship run.
He also said he's going to change the game and everything. He sounds like a big ego, but
he's just a weird dude.
Yeah, he's a weird. How about Porzingis at 36? If he opts in, no,
I don't like Porzingis at all.
Okay, that's no problem. How about CJ McCollum at 35? No.
If he's going to be, can you finish games with McCollum, Curry, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond? Can you defend well enough at the end of games? I think so. He's a rig. I'll ask you, can you defend well enough at the end of games with McCollum, Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond?
I don't think so. No, and I also think
that's a no.
He's too expensive for the kind of player that he is. How about Ingram at 33.8 and then one last year at 36? Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, if you could get Ingram for sure. I don't think the Pelicans would be looking to do that. He's also had injury problems. If you could get Ingram in a Poole Kuminga type deal, yes.
How about DeAndre Ayton? 32, 34, 36, or 35.5.
I'm out. I think I'm out on Ayton.
I am too. I don't know. Something wrong there. A couple more. How about Jaylen Brown at 31? He's on an expiring.
Yeah, I would. Hell yeah. I would trade Poole and Kuminga for Jaylen Brown. Heck yeah.
I would too.
I'd try to re-sign him, and I think he'd want to be here. So, and I know there's been this pseudo debate about, well, Andrew Wiggins outplayed him, and Andrew Wiggins was the best player in that final series a year ago. And by the way, we are coming up on tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the Warriors winning the championship in Boston on the 16th, and the 9-year or 8-year anniversary of the Warriors winning the first title. They won 2 of them on June the 16th. There was this debate about Wiggins and Jaylen Brown, and almost as if, well, I'd rather have Wiggins than Jaylen Brown. It's like, no, you wouldn't. Here's the thing on Wiggins, because it relates to Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown can function as your second best player. And you've seen over the years as Boston's second best player with Tatum, what they can do, right? They're getting to the conference finals every year, getting to the finals. They haven't been able to get over the hump, but they're in that every year. He knows he's a number 2 player. Andrew Wiggins was the Warriors' second best player when nobody told Andrew Wiggins he was the Warriors' second best player. It was all just kind of happened. There was no, if you tell Andrew Wiggins he's the Warriors' second best player now, I don't like that. I don't want Andrew Wiggins.
No, so then he's pressing. My only concern about Jaylen Brown is the knee. It's what exactly is the status of his knee
and his handle, but he functions fine with that handle for the most part in the regular season. I think Jaylen Brown is, and I got to look at how old he is at this point, but I think Jaylen Brown 28. Yeah, I think Jaylen Brown is Jaylen Brown's only 26.
26, okay.
I think Jaylen Brown, he's just now entering his prime. He's going to be 27 in October, so he'll play next year at 27. But to me, if you could get Jaylen freaking Brown, you go get Jaylen freaking Brown, and you have him and Wiggins with
I'll
Clay.
Tell you the guy that I love. I love Marcus Smart. If you could get Brown and Smart, I'd love to do that. That might be my first choice. DeMar DeRozan, $28 million expiring.
I don't love it. I don't love it. He's all mid-range, not a great 3-point shooter.
He's does get mid-range. He's a great mid-range player.
Does get to the free throw line a lot too. The Warriors, that would help their free throw numbers, which might help their defense playing a little bit more half court. So
a couple last ones here. Julius Randle, 25, 27. You don't like Randle?
He needs the ball. He's an ISO player. That doesn't work.
Yeah. John Collins.
I like John Collins.
25.3, 26.5, 26.5.
He goes a little far. Yeah, he goes a little farther down the road than I think I'd want, but I like John Collins. He's a real skilled offensive player. He's good around the basket. He can shoot the 3 a little bit. If they wanted off of John Collins, I'd consider that. But again, what are they? That's another one of these Jordan Poole type moves. I I do like John Collins' skill set. I'll put it that way.
Anthony Simons, 24, 25, 27.
Small guard. He's I feel like Anthony Simons, because of Portland's situation, has been put in a position where he's almost been treated like he's a number 2, and at times even a number 1, because Lillard's been hurt so much lately, where I think he feels like Anthony Simons is a bench player. Like Anthony Simons, so he's making way too much, I think.
Yeah, way too much. Way
too young. And so I no. The short answer is no on Anthony Simons, but Anthony Simons to me is a backup guard. He's super small too. Like he just no defense. Like, yeah, I'm out on Anthony Simons.
Jared Allen, $20 million a year. Shot blocker, rim runner. They got enough big men in Cleveland.
Can you play him and Draymond together at the end of games?
No, you can't.
So then you're probably not. And it's
how about a guy you could play with Draymond, who's also in the same price tag, Bojan Bogdanovic, 20 and 19.
From Detroit?
Yep.
Yeah, he's got 2 more years.
2 years, 20 and 19.
I would take him. Yeah. Yep. You probably have to, but again, any of these guys that are in that 18 to 22 range, you're going to have to take you're probably going to have to take a bad contract back, because you're going to be shipping a bad contract to make the money equate. Yeah.
Well, that's basically the list right there. Last question, and we appreciate your time, JD. And awesome to have you here. And it's you and I can wrap sports for literally days.
No doubt.
Joe Lacob is, there were some people saying Joe Lacob's the best owner in the history of Bay Area sports. He's better than Eddie D. Is there a chance that Joe Lacob is going to have a Charlie Finley like deal, where Charlie Finley built the A's? He built the A's. He literally went out and built the A's of the early 70s. He presided over those drafts, and him and his scouts found all these great Rudy and Jackson and Hunter and you name it. I mean, they found all these guys. But then he tore it apart and kind of became all about Charlie. The free agency hit, and he sold everything off, and he almost had like 2 ownerships. Is Joe going to have 2 ownerships? I mean, he's got his own board, and he's basically come out and he said he kind of in a really, some people loved it, other people didn't love it as much, but he came out and said, we are going to win, but your core's all old, and that statement right there may be the reason that Bob Myers tucked tail and got the hell out of there. Is Joe Lacob going to have a second chapter of his ownership that doesn't go well, or do you think he'll just do whatever he needs to do to figure it out, whether it's firing his own kid or finding another coach beyond Kerr, or just doing whatever because he was like, we are going to win. And it's like,
it was a defiance.
It was weird to hear somebody say that. It was, in a way, it was awesome, right? In a way, it's like, damn right. Way to go, Joe. You say it. Tell him. But then on the other hand, you're like, is this guy high as a kite? I mean, what the heck? Could he really expect to win when it's basketball, and you win when you have players, and his core's all old, and I don't know. They don't seem like the young guys don't look like they're a championship core at all. I know the bar's not that high, and Denver's not like some world beater. It's not like the rest of the league is on some trajectory where you're like, oh, look at this team, look at that team, look at this team, look at that team. There's no way they'll ever compete. But I don't know. It's like, I feel like he kind of said it in kind of a hollow way. Like, this is my intent, but I don't really have a plan. What do you think of the next chapter of Joe's ownership beyond Bob, now potentially with his kids or Dunleavy being his handpicked general manager? What do you think, JD?
Well, the short answer is we're going to find out as soon as Steph Curry's not around anymore, and maybe before then.
Yeah, maybe before,
but for sure when Steph's not around. I'm kind of with you, and I was at the press conference when Bob announced that he was leaving, and I was right there when Joe said what he said, and there was a confidence to it. I didn't think it was hollow. I thought it was Joe's a gambler. And I think he will bet on himself to be able to pull, to do what everyone thinks cannot be done. And the one thing that I've always kept in my mind, I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of weeks here since that day. It's been about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks, I guess. I just keep thinking about the night that he got booed at Oracle and what he said when he came to the Warriors about how the banner's lonely and I'm going to get more of these. And it just made me think as he was up there because on the one hand it was, wow, this bravado, it is a little delusional on the surface, but you're right. You appreciate and respect the confidence, and
he's a self-made billionaire.
But,
think about that before. How many self-made billionaires are there?
Well, and beyond that, it's the fact that he's done the unthinkable with this franchise already. So to say that he couldn't or can't, and when he said it, nobody knew who Steph Curry was. Like, that's the other thing. And I know, like, hitting on Steph was like drawing a great hand. And if you're playing poker, you drew a great hand and you did a lot of real good things around it. And it's none of it happens without Steph. But nobody knew when he said it, if Steph was just an all-star player or a future Hall of Famer or what he was. So that's one thing I've always kept in the back of my mind is like, you can't really doubt him either until it doesn't happen. And they are in a position where this thing is, it's fragile. It's really fragile. The state of the Warriors right now is probably as fragile as it has been at any point since Joe Lacob has been owner, going back to the end of 2010 and on into 2011. So, are there ways to cobble together one more championship run? Maybe. Could it completely fall apart next year to where this team is in the lottery again? Maybe. Like to me, both of those outcomes are absolutely on the table. But I think the Warriors, look at Denver in the sense, look at I'm always a believer, look at the teams that just won. Like Denver just won the title. Obviously, Jokic might be the best player in the world right now to date. And Murray was incredible, and they, Porter Jr. did his thing, and Gordon did his thing, and their role players were exceptional. From Caldwell Pope to Bruce Brown to even Braun from Kansas, made an impact. Like so many guys made.
Somebody on the text line was like, "It's not Braun, man, it's Brown." I was like,
Brown. I'm sorry, Brown.
I got it. Sorry.
Christian Brown. Yeah, my bad.
It's like the text line just kills me sometimes.
But. Anyway, do the Warriors have the star power to do it? Is the first question, right? And at one point they did. At one point, and they still have Steph, but do they have the second star? That's the question. Like, you have to ask yourself that question: do they have the second star? And that question is iffy. But I think where the Warriors can look at Denver beyond that is the way Denver tweaked the rest of their roster after Murray and Jokic, from Gordon to Bruce Brown to Caldwell Pope. Because to me, those, if you really look at this series, the stars always win you championships. And Jokic and Murray were spectacular. But beyond that, who are the guys that won the Nuggets the title? It was Gordon, it was Gordon, Bruce Brown, and Caldwell Pope were there. Like
Bruce Brown and Caldwell Pope were phenomenal role players for them.
Every time those guys needed to hit a big shot or make a big play, like it was very Warrior-esque. It was very Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, pick your role play. It was very, Warriors of the past in terms of those guys stepping up. What I'm bringing it back to kind of close it out is, can the Warriors if the Warriors are going to trade Poole and trade Kuminga, because those are the two pieces that they have to trade, can they find the Gordon, Brown, Caldwell Pope? Can they find their own version of those three players to surround Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, Looney, to where now you have 8 really freaking good players for one more run? That, to me, is the question that the Warriors have to ask themselves as they try to plot all of this out. Because it's not going to be the young guys getting better. It's not.
Would you do Poole and Kuminga for Zion? What do you think?
Man.
Zion, relax here, says Zion to the Niners. Yeah. If I was going to go
right tackle, can Zion play right tackle?
Yeah. If I was going to go defensive end, if I was going to go Zion, I've got to have a game plan to get his body lighter. And when I say lighter, I'm talking about not just fat. I'm talking about muscle mass. I'm talking about using anything and everything. We saw LeBron do it, JD. We've seen a couple of other guys do it where they somehow could trim down their muscle mass in the offseason because they're carrying too much weight. If somehow, to me, Zion is never going to make it in the NBA unless somebody can figure out a way to get him to top out at 280. If he's a pound over 280, I don't think he can play in the NBA without plantar fasciitis, stress fractures in the ankles, knees, problems. If you can get him under 280 and figure that out, I would take a chance on him. That would be intriguing because Joe, God knows he's a big name. God knows he's a draw. God knows he's exciting as hell. But he also is a broken player with a broken body whose only promises to get more and more broken. To me, I saw him at Duke. He was like 280, 285. He can't be anything more than that. He's got to be sub 280. What do you think, JD? Can they get him sub 280? Is Zion just going to be kind of the Bill Walton of his era? What's your prediction on Zion's career?
Yeah, it's such a chicken and the egg thing, right? Like he gets himself to a point where he can play, he has an injury, and then seemingly when he is out and can't play, that's when he kind of balloons up, and then it impacts his ability to come back and play, and then they're sort of starting the whole process over again. And it just kind of goes round and round and round, right? When he isn't able to play, he gets heavier, and then that becomes the reason he can't return to play, is because he's too heavy. And so at this point,
you're leaning towards no.
I'm leaning toward like the practical, logical side of me is like no, but he also is one of those guys that is that high end draft, that high end number 1 pick in the draft. That if you can, I don't want to say buy low because they'd be giving up a lot to get him at that point.
It'd still be buying low.
But
what
you
his
could
price tag was.
But you could make the case it is buying low, and if you can keep him healthy, wow, that's a dynamic that really makes you special, and it's something that you didn't have before. So on that front, I'm kind of thinking maybe the answer is yes, because Kuminga, like you can't count on Kuminga being a factor. Like he might be a factor next year. I think they're going to trade him. That's what it's looking like, but.
It could be a win-win. It could be a win-win for the Pelicans and Warriors. Poole,
you'd be giving up on, but he wasn't a great fit, obviously last year. But no, I think, the logical side of me says, my God, could you imagine if you get? I think you also have to look at it in terms of, well, let's say you get Zion and then Zion can't, plays 50 games or less. Then what does it look like at that point? And I'm thinking, well, Kuminga didn't play a lot this year. And, Poole, you kind of need it. Like, so you still have to replace Poole with somebody else, right? Like, even if you use him to get Zion, you'd have to replace that guy. So who do you replace that guy with? So in a way, I kind of feel like the risk may not be as great because you're going to have to fill Poole's spot with some kind of combo guard that can score. So even if it's a minimum combo guard that can score, so you're going to be covered somewhat there. So that maybe makes me lean toward maybe it is worth the risk a little bit more.
I mean, if you could somehow grow the deal and get somebody like Trey Murphy or somebody like that
Oh,
coming back, I mean,
God,
Kira
love
Lewis
him.
or something. Yeah, I mean,
Love Murphy.
Yeah, I love Murphy
I'm just
too. I was wishing they had gone with Murphy instead of Moody. Back in that draft, I think Trey would have been phenomenal.
And he'd have been playing these last couple of years.
Oh, 6'9", 2 guard with great
sweet shot.
Sweet shot, yeah. JD, we'll let you go, brother. We'll see you next Thursday night on the 95.7 The Game draft coverage with Alan Stiles. I can kiss your butt and tell you how good you are, but you know how I feel about you, man. You do a great job. I think you're super underrated. I love your knowledge. I love your delivery. I love, to me, you were like the best Warrior guy to have on. I really appreciate you coming on after your post games this year, and onward and upward, my man. Just keep it rolling, and we always love hearing you. And if I wind up doing Niners pre on 95.7 this year, some of my favorite segments were me, you, and Lowe chopping it up in the pregame on Niners. So
yeah,
keep it rolling, man. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to next Thursday as well. And we live too close to one another to not grab that beer, man. We've been talking about it for a year. We got to make sure we do that.
Let's do it this summer. We'll definitely do it this summer.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Larry.
All right, bro. Take care. JD, John Dickinson. Fantastic. JD's really, really good. Senior softball game says JD will be going big time very, very soon. I'm a big JD fan. William Weston says, JD, my analysis twin. Haha. I agreed with so many of his takes. Great knowledge base. Yeah, JD is really, really good. We also have this one from 95.7 Brian, who says, besides dunking and jumping, what does Zion do on the court that is considered great? That's a great point. It really is. Brian, you're absolutely right. I mean, if anything, he's just kind of a draw. He's a draw, and he's got star potential. Trent Balky said, Larry, you and Willard were going at it today. We go at it all the time, man. I don't know. Willard and Willard might be like the one guy that just, we can't talk sports without arguing. I mean, seriously, we like argue with each other all the time. But yeah, I love going on with Willard. Willard's fantastic. I'll be on tomorrow with Willard, and Farhan Zaidi is going to join us tomorrow on the show. So I'm looking forward to that. Farhan Zaidi stopping by. Steve Supremo says almost 19,000 subs. All right. All right. That's going to do it for us. Let me just play our spots. Let me tell you where we're at sub-wise, though. Let me just double check that. We are sitting at 18,919. So if you're in the live stream right now and you haven't hit like and subscribe, please hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that just helps more people find the shows. And if you hit subscribe, you'll be alerted every time we're going live. So we're at 18,919, trying to get to 20,000 before training camp. Relax says, you might hit 19,000 subs tonight. Well, we'd need almost 81 subs. So yeah, we have 170 people still hanging in the live stream right now. If you're hanging and you haven't hit like or subscribe, please hit both. Hit like and subscribe, and be part of the Krueger show on a regular basis. All right, let's thank our sponsors. We got a new sponsor, Marin Auto Glass. You see the scroll on the bottom of the screen, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. If your windshield breaks or you got a crack in it, you need it replaced, they'll come out and change it for you. We're also brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. Here's what they look like in Marin.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueger Show. Thanks to JD for stopping by. Thanks to all of you for watching. Check me out tomorrow on 95.7 The Game from 2 to 6 p.m. with the great Mark Willard. Farhan Zaidi is going to be in the house, and also Austin Haynes, Kyle Haynes for the Giants Farm System Director, and both those guys are outstanding. So I'm looking forward to talking a lot of Giants baseball tomorrow with Willard. We'll also get into a little 49ers tomorrow on the show. Tomorrow night on the channel, we are, by the way, tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., Jack Hammer is going to be in the house. We're going to do a little Niner live stream from 11 to 12 tomorrow before I take off for the city. And then tomorrow night, after I'm on the radio from 2 to 6 on 95.7 The Game, Giants Dodgers, and we're going to go post game with Ned Coletti. And Danny's going to join us. And, you know, we asked Matt Chisholm if Farhan would join me and Ned tomorrow on the show, and he said he'd look into it. So, heck, it may be a situation where I'm talking with Farhan twice tomorrow, maybe on 95.7 and possibly with Ned Coletti and Dan Cochimilio on the Krueger Show after Giants Dodgers in the postgame. So wouldn't that be something on a Friday night if we had Ned and Danny and me and Farhan chopping it up on the first night of Giants Dodgers from Dodger Stadium? That would be cool. Until tomorrow, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 with Jack Hammer on the Krueger Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.